Tonight on Reporting Scotland. Two of Scotland's most senior police officers are accused of using the force's firing range for unauthorised purposes. The percentage of patients waiting longer than 18 weeks for treatment to begin has risen to its highest level since targets were introduced. Released from prison in India, Billy Irving from Argyll is free after 4 years, and his partner hopes he'll be home for Christmas.
I just wanted to be with him for the rest of my life, and I'm so lucky to have him. I'm just dead happy.
Also on the programme, 250 jobs are being cut from the Rosyth dockyard workforce. And the secret collection of Paisley's past goes on display for the first time. Good evening. Two of Scotland's most senior police officers have been accused of using the force's firing range for unauthorised purposes. The allegations surround Assistant Chief Constable Bernard Higgins and Superintendent Kirk Kennell. Both have been suspended along with two other colleagues. The details emerged on the day the embattled force created a new role to oversee professional standards. Our Home Affairs correspondent Riva Alderson reports.
The BBC has learned two of the senior officers suspended last week are accused of using the force firing range for unauthorised purposes. Kirk Kennell, the head of armed policing, and one of the force's most high-profile officers, Assistant Chief Constable Bernie Higgins, who was in charge of anti-terrorism and public order. The range at Jackton near East Kilbride should only be used in controlled circumstances by trained officers. That means it should have been off limits to the men who aren't firearms qualified. The revelations came as a regular meeting of the Scottish Police Authority, which oversees the National Force, was underway in Stirling. It's a time of rare turmoil, with the Chief Constable on special leave and other senior officers suspended pending separate investigations into their conduct.
As colleagues know, ACC Bernard Higgins was suspended on Friday evening along with three other officers.
The man in charge of the force had signalled his intention to bolster the senior management team. Today he did just that.
I think the application of suspension is something we take very seriously.
Alan Spears is one of two new Assistant Chief Constables. He'll be in charge of professional assurance and standards. It's a move the Deputy Chief Constable says is significant at what he admits has been a challenging time for the force.
We know there's a legitimate concern at the moment in regard to the conduct of police officers and staff and also our ability to handle data appropriately. So I've created this new command. Alan Spears is a very experienced officer. He currently heads professional standards for us, and that command will be professionalism and assurance. And I think that will hopefully give the public and the wider community confidence.
The SPA was told the force is giving its full cooperation to all investigations, but officers wouldn't comment on any of the inquiries.
Well, let's go now to our Home Affairs correspondent, Riva Alderson. Riva, another day in which Police Scotland's been in the spotlight.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any quieter tomorrow, Jackie, because the Justice Secretary, Michael Matheson, is to make a statement on the situation at Police Scotland to Holyrood. Now, the Tories have already called on him to give some clarity to the situation. They say he has got to get a grip on what they say is the chaos afflicting the force, and Labour say that Michael Matheson has been posted missing in recent days, citing operational difficulties. So it is going to be a big day for them politically, but it's quite interesting that the Deputy Chief Constable Ian Livingston has taken today to try to reassure members of the public with what the police are going to be doing to make sure that their probity is of the highest standard. I say it's interesting that he's doing that because bear in mind, he is only in interim charge while the Chief Constable is on leave. But Ian Livingston has determined quite clearly that he wants to sort things out as quickly as possible, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Riva Alderson there. The percentage of patients waiting longer than 18 weeks for treatment to begin has risen to its highest level since targets were introduced. The newest figures show nearly 1 in 5 patients is waiting longer than the target time. Lisa Summers reports.
Today's figures show the NHS under increasing pressure. An 18-week target for treatment to begin at a 6-year low. The target was set by the government in 2011. After a period of meeting it, it's been steadily falling since the middle of 2014. The latest figures show only 81.4% of patients started treatment within 18 weeks. Other key waiting times have not been met. For 1 in 5 patients who've had a treatment agreed, they're still waiting more than 12 weeks for it to begin. And more than 14,000 patients didn't get the results of a key diagnostic test within 6 weeks. Cancer charities say it causes undue stress.
We know that waiting to find out whether or not they have cancer can be a very anxious time for people, and that's why today's figures are so concerning. At Cancer Research UK, we're concerned to see that the Scottish Government has not only missed its 6-week target for diagnostic tests, but also that the figures are getting worse.
The government says it's working to improve things.
Putting more money into the system is not enough in itself, which is why the reforms to elective care in the same way as we've done for unscheduled care and changing the way we deliver our outpatient appointments is really important if we're going to be able to meet the demands, not just in the here and now, but into the future as well.
But opposition parties say it's not good enough.
I'm incredibly angry that this is where we are in Scotland, with just 81% of people actually meeting that 18-week referral. I think it's completely unacceptable. It's the mismanagement of our health service under this government which is to blame, and we want to see action taken to address this as soon as possible.
With winter approaching, this will mean additional strain on the NHS.
Waiting times are important because they give a clear picture of how the NHS is performing. But increasingly, we're seeing problems meeting targets, particularly with hospital care, and that indicates wider challenges across all of our health services. Lisa Summers reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
A former soldier from Argyll who spent 4 years in an Indian jail on firearms charges has been released from prison. The family of Billy Irving, who along with 5 other Britons had their convictions quashed by an appeal court yesterday, say they hope he'll be home by the end of the week. Suzanne Allen reports.
And that's Billy. Big wave to the camera.
She describes it as surreal. Billy Irving's fiancée is seeing his release for the first time. He was one of 6 British men driven out of Chennai prison at just after 7:30 our time this morning. This is the first picture of him since then, staying at a friend's house, smiling, happy, relieved.
When we got the verdict yesterday, I never in a million years thought that he would be out the next day. And then to get the phone call this morning from Billy himself to say that he was out, he was in the embassy, he was enjoying a beer with all the embassy staff and just celebrating the release was just phenomenal.
In October 2013, Billy and 34 other men were arrested on board a ship in India for the illegal possession of weapons. The crew said their documentation was legal. They were there on anti-piracy work. The Indian authorities put them on trial and then in jail. Conditions were grim.
Billy had been drinking the water that was provided for him, which then led him to have dysentery and to be hospitalised for quite a bit. He lost over 4 stone and was really, really ill. They have to sleep on concrete floors. They have no beds. It's rat infestation, snake infestation, and really, really dirty.
Billy and Yvonne have a 2-year-old son. He's seen his dad just 3 times. Yvonne wants him to know and love Billy the way she does.
I just wanted to be with him for the rest of my life, and I'm so lucky to have him. I'm just dead happy.
The family say if it all goes to plan, he could be home this week.
As long as he's home for Christmas, that is really what I'm aiming for at the moment. Anything before that will be phenomenal. It'll be so good.
The Indian authorities could still appeal the court's decision. Suzanne Allen, reporting Scotland.
Well, what does happen now? Mr Irving and his fellow Britons have been set free. The BBC South Asia correspondent Sanjoy Majumdar has been following events in Chennai.
Tonight, Billy Irving and his mates are spending their first night of freedom in hotels instead of a prison cell. Earlier in the day, they were taken to the British Deputy High Commission, where they were briefed and they completed some paperwork. The High Commission is in touch with the Indian authorities to determine what the next steps are. The biggest question is whether the prosecution will appeal against the judgment that was passed yesterday. At the moment, there's no indication if they're going to do so. In fact, defence lawyers believe that it's not a step that's likely to be exercised. But even if that doesn't happen, there are a number of formalities that need to be completed before the men can go home. It's a process which could take several days, perhaps even a week or two.
Around 250 jobs are being lost at Rosyth Dockyard in Fife. Babcock International is laying off workers who are building 2 aircraft carriers for the Royal Navy, where our business correspondent David Henderson is there. And David, we believe this decision has been made because much of the work on the warships has already been done.
That's right, Jackie. This contract to build 2 aircraft carriers has been on an enormous scale. The cost of the contract, of course, £6 billion. And for that, the Royal Navy have 2 aircraft carriers, the biggest warships ever to have been built for the Royal Navy. At one point, the work employed 10,000 people, and 1,000 people are still employed here at Rosyth, finishing off the second of the 2 aircraft carriers. But of course, HMS Queen Elizabeth has already sailed. The bulk of the work has been completed. And as a result, today, Babcock, one of the contractors, have announced they're laying off 250 workers because they say they are no longer required here.
So, David, how is the long-term future looking?
Well, for the next couple of years, Jackie, things go on as before. Work to finish HMS Prince of Wales continues. That ship will be handed over to the Royal Navy sometime in 2019. What happens then, though, is up for debate. What the unions here representing the shipyard workers would like to see is for more work to come here. They say they would like to see the next generation of Royal Navy support vessels built here. These are right now our vessels that are built at yards right around the world. The unions say that's the wrong approach. They say they want them built here in the UK, and they say that would guarantee work here at Rosyth for many years to come. Jackie.
David, thank you. Former residents of an orphanage in Lanarkshire have told the Child Abuse Inquiry of the physical and sexual abuse they suffered as children at the hands of nuns and other staff. Giving evidence as stage 2 of the inquiry got underway, one survivor described beatings as a normal part of growing up at the Smileham Park residential home that had been run by an order of nuns. This is the first time the Child Abuse Inquiry has heard directly from survivors. Scottish local authorities are finding it increasingly difficult to provide services and balance the books, according to the Public Spending Watchdog. The Accounts Commission says more councils are dipping into their reserves to pay for day-to-day commitments, and as a result, some could run out of cash in 3 years. Craig Anderson reports from Murray.
The council-run community centre in Elgin provides a range of facilities enjoyed by tiny tots
If you're happy and you know it, say we are!
to those of a more mature vintage. A number of times in recent years, Murray councils tried to save money by closing schools and libraries, but has largely backed down in the face of public opposition. After all, no one wants to lose a service they regard as vital for them.
Oh no, it would be terrible, it would be a disaster.
And then there's all the other clubs, as they were saying, that go on here as well. And the ones for the kiddies and things like that too. We would miss it very much.
Many Scottish local authorities have got financial reserves that they can use for emergencies, a rainy day fund if you like. But many of them, like Murray here, say they've had to dip into those rainy day funds because on them it seems to have been raining for years. If spending and income in Murray continue at the same rate, they'll have exhausted their financial reserves in 3 years. They say a larger block grant from central government is crucial.
We have the third lowest of the 32 regions income per head, which is ridiculous for a rural region with a population of less than 100,000, with miles and miles of roads to look after and bridges to look after.
Though the Scottish Government insists the current cash settlement is fair and that overall cuts to local authority funding for the past year amounted to just 1% of councils' total budgets.
I'm accepting that it's a challenging financial situation for Scotland's public services, but I say again that this is arising from UK budget cuts to Scotland, and within that context, we've tried to protect public services as best we can, and that includes local government.
Meanwhile, the Scottish Government will unveil its budget for next year in just over a fortnight. Then councils will know how much they'll have to play with and how much pain they may have to inflict. Craig Anderson reporting Scotland, Elgin.
So that's the picture in Murray, but how difficult could finances get for any of the country's local authorities? Well, I'm joined by our local government correspondent, Jamie McIver. Jamie, could a council actually go bankrupt?
Oh, Jackie, a council can't simply go bankrupt like a business can, but it is possible that a council may one day find it impossible to produce a balanced budget like they have to do by law, so would be bankrupt in that sense. Then the likelihood is the administration would resign and civil servants from the Scottish Government would have to step in to keep local services running.
And how widespread is this problem of councils dipping into reserves and potentially depleting them?
Well, the Accounts Commission says far more councils are now doing this, and as well as Murray, 2 other councils risked using up reserves within 3 years if the current trends continued. Now, of course, reserves are there for emergencies and exceptional circumstances. If a council needs to use reserves for normal spending, then that's a problem. But it should be noted that some councils didn't put up the council tax this year, and some of them effectively used reserves to make up the difference.
Jamie, thank you. It's 7:15. A reminder now of tonight's top story. 2 of Scotland's most senior police officers are accused of using the force's firing range for unauthorised purposes. And still to come, we hear from a South African World Cup winning rugby captain on the talent in Scotland's national team. Scottish ministers have decided not to press ahead with a recommendation to make arm's-length organisations, such as those providing leisure activities on behalf of local councils, pay business rates. Now, the move runs counter to the conclusions of an expert review. So let's go to Holyrood now and our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, so what's the thinking behind this decision?
Jackie, you know that several councils have arm's-length semi-autonomous organisations to run, for example, leisure centres. An expert review chaired by Ken Barclay, who's a banker, he looked at this, he said, no, he looked at a wide range of business rates issues, but on that one he said, no, that wasn't fair. They weren't competing fairly with private gyms. He said they should pay business rates in future. Now, the Scottish Finance Secretary, Derek Mackay, took a look at it. He's going to review other issues in the report generally. For example, he's already said that nurseries, children's nurseries should be exempt. But on this question of leisure centres and arm's-length organisations, he said, no, there's a greater benefit to Scotland in promoting a healthy lifestyle. So he said they wouldn't pay business rates, but he warned councils that if they try and get round business rates still more by creating even more arm's-length organisations, then that wouldn't be on and he'll clamp down.
And the expert review also proposed applying business rates to independent schools. Where is that one going?
Jackie, I think the verdict on that will be rather different. It is my very firm expectation that independent schools will in future be expected to pay business rates. The estimate is that could be a total bill of around £5 million to the independent schools. They're likely to be unhappy with that. They will say that they'll have to push up fees and perhaps drive people out of that system and back into the state sector, but it is my firm expectation that the Scottish Government will heed the advice on this one of the expert review and will apply business rates to independent schools. Let's put it this way, if I were a bursar at an independent school tonight, I'd be preparing for a bigger bill.
Brian Taylor at Holyrood, thank you. A man has appeared in court accused of threatening to stab an 18-year-old woman before raping her in Dundee. Prosecutors allege the attack took place in a car park in the city last Thursday night, close to Dundee University. 36-year-old Mark Arnott appeared in private at the City Sheriff Court. He made no plea and was remanded in custody. Up to 100 jobs will be created at a new decommissioning facility in Dundee. WellSafe Solutions specialises in the decommissioning of underwater oil and gas wells. It'll work alongside other companies already based at the port. Decommissioning of redundant offshore installations is forecast to be worth billions of pounds in the coming years. Police are investigating an unusual spike in the theft of Asian jewellery in the Glasgow area. The jewellery is highly valuable because it's made with 22-carat gold and carries no hallmark, making it difficult to trace. Since July, there have been 44 reported housebreakings, mostly in Newton Mearns and Rob Royston, with more than £600,000 worth of cash and Asian jewellery stolen. Detectives say they're following several leads.
It certainly appears it's a very experienced crime group that are carrying out these crimes. They're very specific about the addresses they break into and the property they're taking. They are not taking any other high value items from the house. They're targeting only the gold from these houses. So I would say they're very experienced in what they do.
A former Scotland striker and his ex-Dundee United teammate have lost an appeal against a civil ruling that they raped a woman. Appeal judges held up the ruling that David Goodwillie and David Robertson raped Denise Clare at a flat in West Lothian on New Year's Day in 2011. The player claimed the sex was consensual. A police investigation was carried out and no criminal prosecution took place. However, the Court of Session found they'd raped her due to her excessive alcohol intake and awarded Miss Clare £100,000 in damages. Former South Africa rugby captain Francois Pienaar says Glasgow and Scotland fullback Stuart Hogg is now a role model for aspiring Scottish players. Hogg was forced to miss the final autumn test at the weekend through injury, but his excellent form over the past few years hasn't gone unnoticed, as Brian McLaughlin explains.
Two legends of rugby union in Scotland to promote sport as part of a global mentoring programme.
But Hogg has it, and Hogg for the line and for the score.
With the excellent form of the Scotland and Glasgow fullback certainly catching their eye.
Well, I was at the International Rugby Awards on the weekend, and Stuart and I had a beer in the small hours of the morning, and I just congratulated him with his style of play, and also as a man, as a human being. He's a role model. So his style of play and the fact that he wants to take risks, he doesn't conform to the norm, but the other players around him, they expect that too. So that makes a side always dangerous.
Hogg was forced to pull out of Saturday's win against Australia just before kick-off, but he insists his progression as a player is not just down to him alone.
I'm very fortunate to play in two very good teams in Glasgow and at Scotland. You know, I try and learn new things every single day, learn off the coaches, learn off other players, and try and get the best out of myself, because you know, the big thing for me is that you're never the complete rugby player. You've always got something to learn, always something to work on, and I just want to try and get the best out of myself.
Hogg came close to earning Scotland a hard-earned win against New Zealand, and one of the great All Blacks of days gone by says he now has a similar mindset as the world's best.
They played very well against the All Blacks, and that's, you know, I suppose the disappointment is that we haven't seen enough of that. He's been plagued by injuries, and once again last Saturday. But yes, he's going to get better and better, and that's another thing that I like. And that's what you see with the All Blacks. They prepare better than anyone else, and with preparation comes sacrifice. And a lot of players, especially in the north, haven't been prepared to make that sacrifice, and now they are.
Hogg's injury may mean he will miss the next few weeks for Glasgow, with the nation hoping he'll be fully recovered by the time the Six Nations campaign begins early next year. Brian McLaughlin reporting Scotland.
Scotland's first museum on the high streets will open to the public this week. I don't think you'll be able to buy much, but tens of thousands of items from Paisley Museum collections will be stored there. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean can tell us more.
Beneath Paisley High Street, a different sort of store is preparing to open its doors. This purpose-built museum store will house tens of thousands of artefacts from Paisley's past. Or like this Syrian glass from 200 AD, objects collected by Paisley people.
I was surprised when we opened boxes up and found them. I don't think they've ever been on display before, you know, and so a project like this has really sort of opened up the doors and created a lot more access to the objects that we have.
Many of the objects were donated by Paisley's mill owners, including the Coates family, who also gave the town its museum. And when that closes next summer for a multi-million-pound refurbishment, this new facility will become even more important.
It's a secret in that probably a lot of people in Paisley and Renfrewshire don't know that they have it, but it's a collection that we want to share, and we want to make it known that, you know, this is everyone's collection and that everyone should be able to access it.
And with just over a week until Paisley finds out whether it's won the chance to be UK's City of Culture in 2021, The new store in the heart of the High Street sends out an important message.
We have a massive cultural history from arts, our textiles obviously. We have a history of music, but I also think within these stores you have some of the socio-cultural history, and I think that's something that we haven't been able to display as well because of the limits. And I think that being able to see this as your social cultural heritage, and here it is, it's what the bid is all about.
Polly McLean reporting Scotland, Paisley.
Time for the weather now from Judith.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and good evening to you. Well, a cold few days lies ahead, so cold that the Met Office have issued a yellow be aware warning for ice across the northern half of the country, but actually anywhere is at risk of ice where surfaces are damp or wet, something to be aware of both tonight and first thing tomorrow. So a lot of dry weather though in the forecast tonight, and a widespread frost as well, but we continue to see those showers pushing into the north, increasingly turning to snow even to lower levels as we head through the course of the evening and overnight period. Some of those showers just fringing the east coast, and windy along the east coast, windy in the north as well, with lighter winds inland. Typical lows tonight for around about freezing in our towns of cities, but as low as -3 in some rural parts, just a little higher towards the coast with that breeze. So we look at the pressure chart, you can see high pressure to the west, low pressure to the east, but that high gradually slips southwards. Nothing's moving too fast. As it does so on Friday, we'll see things turning a wee bit milder and cloudier, but again, it's weather in slow motion. And that's what's happening tomorrow. A lot of dry weather, plenty of sunshine as well from first light across a good part of the country, but those brisk winds keep piling in showers across northern Scotland, and there'll certainly be a wintry flavour to those showers, even some snow to lower levels as well, but some brightness in between times. Temperatures inland struggling up to around freezing, maybe not getting much above at all, so it will be cold everywhere. Winds brisk along the east coast, across the north, the west coast as well. Inland lighter wind, but plenty of sunshine. The best of sunshine destined for Lochaber, North Argyll and down towards the southwest, and we lose any showers from the eastern borders. So as we approach what is now an early dusk, nothing really changes. Dry, a widespread frost setting in. Those showers keep coming into the north. I think there will be a risk of ice once again tomorrow night, so another chilly one. But on Thursday, the isobars open out a wee bit, so not as windy. Still brisk winds along the east coast. Those showers still affecting northern Scotland. Again, we could see some snow to lower levels as well. Plenty of dry, sunny weather too. But you can see the temperatures will be that wee bit lower on Thursday as well. That's your forecast.
Thank you, Judith. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. 2 of Scotland's most senior police officers have been accused of using the force's firing range for unauthorised purposes. It comes on the day Police Scotland created a new role to oversee professional standards. And that's Reporting Scotland. From all of us on the team, good evening.